They have a timber mill in Louisiana, and they know that the Civil War is coming and that the South is not going to be a good place to be when it happens. So they sell the timber mill for gold, and they take out going west to Fort Worth, Texas in covered wagons. Now, the and Megan have their cousins with them, Abby and Emma. Abby is a prim and proper school teacher of the mid-1800s, and her younger sister, Emma, is a little bit lost. You can see in the story how that she doesn't really fit in with the other three, with her sister and her two cousins. They all seem to have a spot in life and know where they're headed, and she doesn't have a clue. Now, I will say that Emma and her sister Abby were raised in a Mississippi plantation, and that their father didn't treat them very well. And Emma had a rebellious streak in her that showed quite often, and her dad locked horns often over that. Now, Abby kind of went about it a different way. She just decided that she would go to school, become educated, be a school teacher, and just kind of venture forth that way away from her dad. And you'll find out more about Abby and Emma's parents as the stories go along. So they have prepared at the timber mill. They've loaded up in their wagons. They've headed out, and almost immediately they started in having hardship and things that were not on the good luck side at all. They've been in a tornado. They've been in a flood. They've had a Black Panther stalk their camp. They've lost their scout. Their horse has been run off. They've had to go find them. And the girls in the storm, they were in a rainstorm, and the hailstones beat Liz up. She fell on the wagon and busted her face up bad. And they got headed in the wrong direction and went too far south. And now they have gotten some help from the military in Fort Polk, and hopefully they are back on track, headed to Fort Worth. And right at the Louisiana-Texas line, they are supposed to be able to meet some Texas Rangers who hopefully will come to their rescue. And everyone has been quite amazed that this is pretty much just a group or a wagon, a train of 6 wagons, a little bunch that is pretty much all women and children. They do have 2 hired workers, John and Blue, that came from the timber mill with them. But Thomas, their main scout, Chet was the main scout, and Thomas, the wagon master, and those 2 got lost early on in the going west. So we're going to start right in on page 106. And it's right at the end of chapter 10. We didn't get the last couple of pages done. And then we're going to go into chapter 11. 3 cowboys sat around the campfire a short distance from the Angelina River. They gathered several thick logs and other kindling and arranged them in the base of the fire pit, forming a teepee around some tall, dried branches, creating an intense furnace inside them that no wind or cold could pierce. The remains of a trail supper surrounded them. The coffee pot bubbled over the fire. Each man wore traditional trail attire. A cowboy hat made of straw for shade and air circulation was deemed most necessary, and the only time it left a man's head was when it swatted the owner's leg in anger or frustration. Even with a lady present, the hat was only tipped slightly, just enough to signify polite courtesy. In such occurrences, the cowboy's hand went toward the brim to tip in acknowledgement, usually in accord with a "ma'am." The removal of a cowboy's hat signified the utmost sign of respect, and such a privilege was not often bestowed. The cowboys sitting around this fire poked at its mesmerizing flame. They wore bandanas around their necks and their long sleeve shirts tucked into denim jeans. They wore ratty cowboy boots made from animal hide and leather belts with heavy, serious buckles. All 3 donned leather vests with the metal star of a Texas Ranger planted over their hearts. The oldest cowboy Tex, though not as old as Lucas Maley, was old enough to be the father of the women for whom he searched. He wasn't a large man in stature, but in attitude and accomplishments you couldn't find much bigger. He was a legend with the Texas Rangers and respected across the territory. Tex couldn't be sure why Lucas Maley had sent his family alone across the land. Then again, why would a man leave his family at all if he had the choice? Tex's duties didn't allow him to agonize over such matters. He intended to locate their wagon train and then bring them safely to the fort accordingly. He had never met Lucas Maley, but he liked him. Through their correspondence, Lucas spoke of his granddaughters as a man would his sons. Tex considered it gutsy no less to send the women with such sizable amounts of gold. He certainly wouldn't have done it. Tex looked over the two rangers with whom he had been riding all day. He had ridden with both of them, and he liked the way they handled themselves. Professional and integrity, like most all rangers he'd ever known. Jackson, in his mid-30s, was tall and broad with a long handlebar mustache. Jackson won most of the battles by sheer intimidation. He rode a large black stallion named Zeus that carried a lofty attitude and listened only to his commands. Even if his enemies knew Zeus as simply a gentle giant, they would certainly not want to chance it, and they rarely did. Tex often teased Colt about his age, still wet behind the ears. Colt was actually 21, but never told anyone. He was 18 when he started riding with the Rangers and had only ever ridden with Tex and Jackson. The two elder cowboys met Colt when they came upon a group of Comanches raiding a traveling group. Burned wagons and bodies lay everywhere, slain by the deadly arrows of the Plains Indians. The Comanches were fierce, superb warriors who could release 6 arrows to one shot of a white man's gun. Colt had come running with a Colt revolver, and he had an aim many could never master, a natural shot. Tex took him in and started calling him Colt after the gun that saved them all that day. As a result, Colt's reputation had grown bigger than life over the years. Tex was the only one who dared tease him about his age. Colt still had a bone to pick with the world, and he would not be intimidated after that wagon raid. His soft brown locks were long down his back, and he kept them tied back with a leather strip. Tex couldn't Okay, we're going to start up again. And we're on page 107, about halfway down. Tex often teased Colt about his age, still wet behind the ears. Colt was actually 21, but never told anyone. He was 18 when he started riding with the Rangers.